But Rebecca, you spend a lot of time in America for work. What's been your reaction to these ongoing ICE raids and the protests that, of course, follow?
I mean, what we saw in Minneapolis last night, I think, is a kind of, like, to your point, is the kind of flashpoint in the ICE policy. You know, Trump 2.0 has invested a staggering sum of money in ICE in his campaign to sort of rid America of what he would consider, you know, to be illegal immigrant communities. We also know that ICE are not that discerning, and the people that get rounded up and included in these raids are often legitimate citizens, people with the right papers, but who just happen to kind of fit a profile that the ICE agents have been kind of, programmed to target. You know, I think what we saw last night was absolutely devastating, and it reminded me a lot of the George Floyd killing that we saw in 2020. And there's a kind of horrendous irony that this happened kind of, you know, not that far, you know, a couple of 100 yards away from where he was murdered. You know, and I think Dr. A makes this great point. Like, America is and always been a nation divided, but now it feels like a nation truly polarized. And, you know, the behaviors of ICE versus the kind of counter ICE movement are both, you know, at high levels of hysteria and operating at this kind of high level of tension. And, you know, what we all watched that video last night in horror, but what astounds me is that you've got kind of almost 50% of America who think that they watched, you know, an ICE agent potentially being kind of run over by a truck, and you've got another half of America that think they watched an extrajudicial killing of an American citizen. And we are in this kind of, you know, and both seemingly have as much kind of credibility and airtime and weight when it comes to the public debate. So I think this feels like it was almost an inevitability when you think about the violence and the hostility of how ICE have behaved. But it is absolutely traumatic. And I think what the fallout from this is really worrying. And I think the calls for calm should not be ignored, regardless of how you feel about ICE, because ICE are armed, lots of Americans are armed, and it feels like, you know, that's these tension points, you know, could have consequences, you know, far reaching what we saw last night, which is worrying for everyone.